I'm Wayne Carey, and this is The Truth Hurts.
We're back for another episode of The Truth Hurts. I'm Ayrton Woolley with the King, Wayne Carey. Duck, good to see you.
Anton, we both look a little bit rusty today. I've just got off the plane, so I've got the jumper and the hat on. So I've got up early from Mount Gambier.
Back from the Mount. Would have been fresh there on the weekend.
It was absolutely freezing this morning. When we got there, it was pretty fresh. Carter's just worked out. He came for the weekend. He's just worked out the frost this morning. How when you breathe out, how the frost comes out of the
You can see your own breath, yeah.
So, no, interesting weekend. And I know that, you get a little bit bored about this, but I'm a big believer, and I've been always very strong on participation medals. Now, I was at
You don't like them.
I was at Mt Gambier Footy Club, which are the Roos.
Yep.
They wear the demon colours, but they're the Kangaroos. Mt Gambier. They had a good win in the A grade, but little Carter played his first Oz kick halftime game. Halftime of the seniors, little kids running around. By the way, got his hands on it. Very happy. Father son, probably still not, but anyway, he got his hands on it. Got 2 kicks, dived on it a couple of times. More worried about running to the boundary and doing laps. He ran more than any other kid on the ground, but wasted running to the wrong spots. But then at the end of the game, I gave all the kids a medal. And I must say, it's great. I mean, all the parents were there, and they love it. The kids love getting
So Carter enjoyed it?
Well, Carter, he did. He absolutely loved it. Lined up, he gets a bit shy, so he was the last one in line to get given a medal, which I was giving out at the end of the game. Held up the A grade game, by the way. It was at halftime, so they were waiting for the kids to get off, which I wasn't happy about. So I'm sort of saying to the kids, come on, let's go. Thanks to Matty, by the way, for having us there. But the kids are lining up. Carter's last. I give him the medal. Now, I love the joy on their face when you first get it, and I thought, for that reason, I love it. But I'm not a fan of participation medals.
Are you still not? You're still not on? I thought you were about to say you had a change of heart. But
no. I love the joy on Carter's face and the other kids' faces when they get the medal. Problem is, Carter wore it then for the next 3 days. And I thought, nah, you can't, once you get the participation, unless you've got it for BOG, best on ground or something like that, then, wear it.
I guess the argument is that now he's got that medal, he's maybe more likely to want to go back to playing footy. Is that?
Well, the problem is he somehow there were a few spare medals, and he thought he was Mr. T. He started putting the other medals on. I said, mate, you can't wear those medals around. He wore it to lunch, he wore it to dinner, he just wore it the whole weekend, and I just doesn't sit quite right with me. Because
so there's going to be an argument in the Carey household when you get home this afternoon.
No. He's so proud of it.
Yeah.
And look, I don't say this to him, but I'm just not I don't think that everyone should get it. I guess at that age, maybe yes, maybe a little bit older.
Yep.
I'm softening here right on the spot.
Yeah. I'm seeing it before my eyes.
Maybe at 4 or 5, okay, participation. After that, no participation medals at all.
And my weekend was a little less eventful than yours, but I do have a judgment question that I want to ask you, and maybe sometimes we question your judgment, but I'm really going to lean on you. I'm really going to lean on you here. So I've got little Ayla, my daughter. She's about 8 months old. The last few days, we've had a dog next door, and we've always had animals around. Never too bothered by it, but it's got a real deep woof woof. Like that sort of.
Well, that's what dogs do, yeah.
Yeah, but real deep. It's not like a little chihuahua. It's something a bit bigger. Anyway,
you haven't looked over the fence?
No, we've got a high fence.
Okay.
I'm not sure which house it actually comes from. Anyway, it's just started, but on the weekend, 3 nights in a row, it woke her up on multiple occasions from her sleep. So I don't know whether the owners are away or whether this dog's more distressed than usual or
hasn't been fed.
I just wonder what the etiquette is here, because it doesn't bother. We're not people that are going to go banging on.
Pretty simplistic for me. You know what? Grow some avocados, walk around, knock on the door, and say, "Excuse me, Muscles. If your dog barks again and keeps my kid up, I'll be around here and I'll be knocking on your door at 1 o'clock in the morning. So keep your dog quiet, or I'll be over it."
Have you had a look at me? I might not be the most intimidating bloke going around. You're going to be there with me to back me?
No, but you've got to knock on the door.
So I can do it politely, you think?
Yeah, well, knock on the door and just say, hey, I don't know whether you've noticed, but I'm sure you have, and unless they are away.
Yeah.
But your dogs,
So that's okay. 'Cause I don't want to be one of those neighbours, but at the same time, when it does it 3 or 4 times at 9 o'clock at night and your kid's waking up, it's...
Yeah. No, well, like I said, grow some avocados and knock on the door. What are you going to do then? You're going to let it go on for the next 6 months and stay up all night?
Well, no. I mean, it's only just started, but or maybe I'll let it go for a couple more days, see if it...
Or look, you know what? Send your beautiful partner to do it then.
Well, she's a bit tougher than me, to be honest. A bit braver.
No, it is an interesting one. When back in the day, well, I won't say back in the day. I know what my old man would have done, which would have been completely wrong.
Yeah.
But you don't obviously do that anymore. So no, you've got to just go knock on the door, ask politely. If nothing happens, then take things into your own hands. You can get those collars. I'm not sure they're actually correct either. You can get. Well, owners can get collars that, when they bark, they just get a little shock.
Yeah, one of my mates was talking about something that we could even have in our yard.
Are you allowed to have those? Or those?
I don't know. No, this is not a shock thing. It's you can set it up in your own yard if for a neighbour's dog's going off, and it sends out a little high-pitched noise if the dog barks, and apparently it's, it doesn't hurt the dog, but it discourages them from barking. Anyway, I don't know how ethical that is as well.
Electrocuting the dogs.
No, probably not. Either. Probably not. Some footy to look at on the weekend. Another crazy round of footy and some big results that are, it just feels like the top 8 connotations are changing by the week. That the Collingwood one was perhaps the most interesting one in a way, and the fact they lost to Hawthorn. You've been big on the Pies in the last few weeks in terms of maybe having some doubts.
Well, for all I'll back over it again. Remember, I said this 6-7 weeks ago. I don't know how many weeks ago, but I'm sure we can find it. They are vulnerable. They're sitting on top of the ladder. They're going to finish on top of the ladder, Collingwood. They have got obviously a really tough run home, and the Cats, Brisbane, and then the Bombers. And doesn't matter where the Bombers are. That's a tough run home. That's a really good run in for me for the Pies, and also a really good test. And what's coming to fruition now is that they're actually now, I guess, when they have a turnover, sides are making them pay, right? So that vulnerability and that taking the game plan on is coming back to bite them a little bit more. And we saw Hawthorn, and Sicily was unbelievable on the weekend, but they got smashed in key areas, obviously centre clearance, and Hawthorn were unbelievable.
Yes, huge discrepancy, 18-3 or something like that. Yeah.
Yep, nothing to lose, the Hawks. But you did see on the weekend as well from a few Pies and a few of their leaders, just fumbles, even I think Pendlebury and Moore, and missing of targets, and just things that I haven't seen from them for a little while. But the Premiership race is wide open. Don't worry about that. And before yesterday's game, I think Melbourne are the team to beat for the Premiership for me.
Yep.
I think they're starting to get it right. But at halftime yesterday, when North Melbourne led them by 4 points, I thought, oh boy, I'm going to be wrong again for the second time in 3 years. So no, they're Melbourne are the team. Port Adelaide now 4 in a row.
Yeah, some big question marks there. Did have some injuries.
Solid on the weekend. Obviously down at the Cattery, although the Cats aren't exactly flying either. But concerning Brisbane fell over the line, and Melbourne weren't that impressive against North Melbourne. So don't worry about that. And then you have the sides in the bottom part of the 8, which is still wide open.
Yeah.
We seem to say this every year, but this is the most open year in terms of having the final 8 almost set. I think there's always been, the last 5 or 6 years that I remember. But remember, Carlton missed out last year.
Last round, yeah.
In the last round. So there's always been that last spot up for grabs. But we're talking from 5th down.
Yeah.
It is a really exciting...
Goes down to about 12th.
Last 3 weeks. And some sides are... faltering. I thought St Kilda were really brave yesterday. I don't think that Ross Lyon looks at that game. I thought they were really, really good. And St Kilda, I think Ross Lyon, by the way, is the coach of the year for me. Having the Saints in the 8 and still there right now in the 8 for the majority of the year.
Yep.
Their run home, though, is...
It's hard. I'm going to
really
reserve
hard.
judgment on Coach of the Year status for Ross until they make it, because I think they'd had similar number of wins last year and they didn't make the finals. So I want them to make finals before I make that call on Ross. But you're a big Ross man.
Well, I think they've had a lot of players out.
They have.
They've had a lot of injuries this year, and they've been in the 8 all year.
Yep. Just before we have a closer look at Carlton and St Kilda, on Melbourne, who you touched on.
Did you know who I had in the 8 at the start of the year?
Who?
Carlton.
Yeah. You're backing over this because you're feeling a bit bad about being wrong on the Blues. Anyway, just on Melbourne and Collingwood, an injury to both teams. One perhaps maybe going under the radar a fraction for Melbourne, but Harrison Petty got injured yesterday. I must admit I hadn't been his biggest fan, but watching them play, he adds to their structure in the forward line in terms of he's providing a contest that some of those other forwards haven't been able to for them.
Yeah.
How much of a difference do you think that'll make for them? And then Nick Daicos with Collingwood. Are you worried about the Pies minus Nick Daicos for 6 weeks?
I think Petty arguably is a bigger loss because you're right. What Melbourne need, they just need someone that competes like a Petty, because I think, obviously Brown's been inconsistent in that area, and others over the last few years have been a little bit inconsistent. Their grand final year, they got everything right. Brown was up and about competing. Obviously, Gawn pushing forward. They had Jackson. So there's a lot of different variables to what's gone on this year. They're starting to get their game going. They're starting to use the ball better, going inside 50 to conversions a little bit better. So a lot of reasons, and he has been a small part of that in recent weeks. So now they've got to go back to maybe they've got to go back to a Brown and say, well, mate, how about put a little bit of steeliness back in your game like you did in our premiership year, because he hasn't really done it since then, Brown, and there's others. So, that's who they've got to find. In terms of Daicos, and yes, he's had an unbelievable year and he's a young superstar. There's no doubt about that. But I think he's replaceable. He's a halfback flanker that's gone into the middle of the ground. He's a great user. He's a great decision maker and all that. But if it was a Myercheck and a Darcy Moore, I'd be more worried about those players for Collingwood than I would, a Daicos.
Yeah, okay, wow.
I think he's more replaceable than what a key position player is.
Yeah, I understand.
Especially at the Pies, because the Pies don't have a great key forward. Myercheck's their best key forward. So if they lost him, Darcy Moore's their best key defender. So those two, I think, bigger losses.
On Collingwood, we often hear after the fact about teams at this time of year, if they've got the luxury that Collingwood have of being a couple of games clear, maybe going through a hard training block, putting a bit of extra work on the track, and so they can look a little more sluggish when they play, and then it helps them later in the year. Where do you sit with that sort of stuff? Because how do you feel about the whole momentum and being fit at the right time, weighing that up versus maybe getting in a bit of extra work? Yeah,
it's a good one, because a lot of Collingwood supporters, and I've got mates that are Collingwood supporters, in particular a couple on the weekend. Frenchie, who, he said, they've just looked a bit sluggish the last, couple of weeks, few weeks, and you don't know. The training block thing, sometimes is, I think a bit of a myth, bit of an excuse. And when they come good, how true is all of that? Have they looked a little bit tired? I don't watch just Collingwood closely enough to understand that, and the only people that can honestly answer that are Collingwood themselves. We all judge it from afar. There are some in the media that throw a dart and might make up in their own heads what they're doing, but Collingwood would be the only ones, and that question should be asked to Craig McRae and say, what is it because of that, or are there other reasons?
Carlton and St Kilda, you touched on the Saints. They were ferocious for a half, particularly in the first half against Carlton. One thing that intrigued me about the game was sort of a bit of a tactical battle that was going on in that, and I'll compare it to the Yarraville Twos on the weekend, because we faced the same thing. On the weekend, we pushed a number up to the stoppage, so one of our half forwards, you'd play with 5 forwards, and you'd have an extra around the footy. But it meant that you're often outnumbered in your front half. I felt like Carlton were kicking the St Kilda spare, which was Josh Battle, a number of times. Now, if you're in the forward line and that's happening, or if you're Carlton, are you just taking that player out of the stoppage and going man on man, or how do you combat that sort of sort of thing?
Well, first and foremost, you've got to make sure that your forwards are actually, or one of your forwards at least. So when, for instance, if the ruckman ever stood in front of myself or a halfback flanker was standing inside of his opponent or there was a loose as well, then you make sure as the key position player of that forward line and the leader of that forward line that you go and make it at least a 2-on-1. So you can't allow that loose player to play loose and more importantly, mark the footy. So you've just got to go and sacrifice your own game to at least compete. That's as basic as it is, because if you don't do that, then they mark it, then obviously they're away from there. So that's the basics of it. What happens though is a lot of forward they don't want to sacrifice and be that player that is basically having two opponents. But that's what you have to do sometimes as the number one forward or the key forward up there is compete, not be outmarked. Now, it's not a puzzle.
Before the game, Carlton GM of Footy, Brad Lloyd, he was asked about Jack Silvagni, who's out injured at the moment. Intriguing answer. He was asked whether there was a contract in front of Jack, and the answer was no. There's not at this stage. It's not. The fact that they've re-signed Tom de Koning, and there's now not a contract in front of Jack. Does that mean that Jack's gone? I mean, surely there would be a contract by now.
Are you comparing them as players?
No. What I mean was Carlton might have been waiting to work out what de Koning was doing before they could work out the financial aspects of other deals. But the fact there's no deal in front of Jack now, would you be worried about that?
It's interesting with the de Koning. I'll get to Jack in a second, but the de Koning, like he's been in and out a lot. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, he was
yesterday. So I just can't see a Silvagni playing at another club.
Yeah,
surely they get a deal done. Imagine his grandfather. He'd be rolling. He would roll over if his grandson ended up going to another footy club. I don't know. Maybe I don't know whether Sauce would even entertain. Sauce might, just to give him a fresh start. I don't know. But Jack, for me, the problem with Jack can play footy. I just don't think he's found where his best footy is, or certainly Carlton haven't found where his best footy is. He's played good footy in a lot of different positions, but hasn't made one of those positions his own. So that's the conundrum that he finds himself in, and I guess Carlton do as well. You know, he's become a Mr. Fix-It. I mean, the fact that they play him in the ruck and he's outsized and then he gets thrown forward. He has a really good game a few weeks ago and kicks 4 and gets the coaches' votes, and you know he's tagged at different times, and you know he's gone down back. He's not overly quick, and he's not as tall as his dad. So there's all these little things that add up for Jack. Can he play AFL footy? Yes, he can. Will they re-sign? I hope so. I just couldn't imagine. I just can't see it. Especially like imagine if Collingwood or someone like that, he ended up at one of the big rival clubs.
It'd be crazy.
The Blues.
Question without notice here, but you have said to me in the past often that your teammates would come to you about contract situations, and because they felt like you'd have a pretty good gauge on how things should be going for them. How often would a player come to you? Would players come to you worried about their position at round 22 and ask for advice in that scenario?
Not their position, no. I think players know. Well, no point asking me. They might ask, what they have to do to get back into the team or what they're doing wrong, and invariably they go to a coach for that. But in terms of contracts, and I got myself into a little bit of trouble with Greg and Ron Joseph, who's no longer with us, with giving information about contracts, because it was a widely regarded no.
Yeah, players talking amongst themselves, you mean?
You don't discuss what you're getting or whatever. But I thought it was really important that, players weren't being ripped off. So, and often an interstate kid coming in. And I remember Robert Pyman from South Australia, who was best known for beating Nathan Buckley before he came into the system, so in the SANFL. And Pies was a ripper, had lots of talent, had a lot of injuries in the end, but he came over on a pretty big contract. And we had the likes of Wayne Schwass and Arch and Steve-O and Sholey and Rocky and all these guys on a certain amount of money, and they'd heard that Robert Pyman had come in and was getting paid more. So I thought it was pretty important to tell them, what people, because I had a bit of inside info about what people were getting, and then they could go back and say, well, use certain people as an example. It didn't upset. It actually made our group, our playing group, stronger. Pissed a few people off.
Yeah, at the club,
in the offices.
Yeah,
I didn't mind doing that. And I had players from other clubs. Mark Rasciuto, rang me from Adelaide Crows and said, Duck, he just wanted a little bit of advice. What some of the other, key players of other teams. And when Roo told me what he was getting paid, I couldn't stop laughing. The Crows weren't big payers.
Is it ever the cause for, we've spoken about the size of your deal. Is it ever the cause for resentment in a playing group?
It can. Yeah. I don't know whether it still would. I think if you go and get, there's no doubt. So let's use McStay as an example at Collingwood. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's any resentment there from anyone else, but, a Myercheck, for instance, who, like I said, is not a key position player, but I would imagine Myercheck's not on the biggest money for a guy that sort of holds up Collingwood and they're sitting on top of the ladder, sort of holds up their forward line. McStay's come there on pretty big money and who's kicked more goals and had more influence. They're little spot fires. Does it still happen? I would assume so, to a degree. Once again, without being in the four walls and depending on the culture and your leadership and, I guess that communication and getting around. Like you look at Geelong's culture and you hear of them taking pay cuts to get the likes of other guys in, and they don't have someone that's on that astronomical amount. Like Jerry McCameron's come in on big money. He's performed. Dusty, Danger's come in on big money.
But he was still relatively cut price, wasn't he, compared to what he would have?
So it's about when they come in on good money, you have to perform. If you're not performing, that's when the little Chinese whispers and the rumours and, you're sitting around the coffee shop saying, geez, this bloke on that, why are we paying him that? He couldn't get a kick in a street fight. So, that can happen.
Were you surprised to hear on Friday night, going back a few days ahead of Richmond's match against the Bulldogs, which could end up ending the Tigers' season? They're not completely out of it, but do you think, were you surprised to hear that Dusty and Cotch were both managed from the game? It was coming off a 5-day break after their loss to Melbourne a week earlier. But
once again, you've got to take it at face value. Surprised, yes. Game you have to win if you want to play finals. But only they can truly answer that question, can't they? But yes, surprised. Dusty's put a solid few weeks together, I think.
Yeah.
Cotchin's played really, really well. It was a game they needed to win. But, if they say they needed to be managed off a 5-day break, then take them for that. Take them for their word. In saying that, though, there are a lot of things clubs say, which is why, I always pot a lot of what the media do because they do make shit up. But so do the clubs.
Absolutely.
Clubs are every bit as bad as what the media are at times. And that's why the media get often things wrong, because they get told crap. So there's two sides to every story. You know that.
Absolutely. No, the clubs are protecting their own interests. They don't want to give too much away at times. And I thought it was interesting watching Andrew McQualter in his media conference after. He was just a bit
defensive.
He was a bit defensive about a question. I think the question might have been used the word rested. And he said, well, they're not rested. They couldn't play AFL football. I find that planning interesting. Like, surely Dustin could have at least been the sub. Surely.
Yeah. Well, once again, you take him for you take him for being honest and giving an honest answer to the media.
Yep.
And just on that again, I don't always blame clubs for not giving the media the honest truth, because the media don't always tell the truth either, do they? But just backing over the payment, because I've been going to the country a little bit, that's when spot fires can really happen.
What are you thinking about here?
No, because
something's popped in here.
because I've been in the country areas, it just bobbed up. if you get a bloke that's paid, like for
Oh,
instance,
at country level.
flown in, country
yeah.
level, you're flying a couple of, oh, by the way, he kicked 100 goals in, A, B, C league, and he's come over. He kicked 112 weeks, and he gets to your club, and he's shocking.
Yeah.
Right? Couldn't catch a cold.
He's on 1,000 a week or something.
He's averaged 1 goal a week. He's kicked 25 for the year.
Yeah.
And he's on $1,500. That's when the spot fires start at country clubs.
Absolutely.
They get around. They go, oh, geez, we got this bloke. Like, how's he done that? I love those. You hear those wherever you go in the bush. You hear those stories about someone that's gone there. And the other thing that they do with the fly-ins too, you need them flying. You need them to be a part of the club.
Yeah.
You can't just grab their cash and get in the car or jump on the plane and fly home.
So they're not training on a Tuesday or a Thursday, they're just literally rocking up and then
correct. You've got to go to the ball and you've got to have a few beers after the game in the club rooms and all that sort of stuff.
Some big career U-turns that I reckon I've identified on the weekend. I wonder if you look at some guys and you probably think they're maybe not up to the level or their careers might be at an absolute crossroads and then they sort of bounce back up. Like I saw Mason Wood get 36 touches and Kyle Langford kick 5 immediately against West Coast. But these are guys who've sort of become really integral role players to their teams now. It just shows sometimes that it's not always over, is it? Like if these guys are prepared to put in the work.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes it's opportunity and sometimes it's getting a clear run at it. So it might be injuries and it might be a fresh start. And that's why, talking about Jack Silvagni, and that's probably where his career is at, given that he's got to sign a new contract. Mason Wood's a great story, I think. I mean, I thought he was a fumbler at North, and yes, he had reasons, great running ability. What is he, 6'3", playing on the wing, beautiful left leg, but he just doesn't fumble anymore. And his second and third efforts, obviously his body's not letting him down anymore, but I think he's one of the great stories because I thought he was cooked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So he's, I agree, and you're right. Langford's been unbelievably good as well. But there's a number of guys over the history of our game that you've thought, they won't go any further, and then all of a sudden, with new opportunity or a new position, they've gone to a new level.
I'd be interested in what our listeners think if they've got any other nominations of guys who looked absolutely gone and then they've made this big U-turn in their careers to be really integral.
Yeah, and send us in also the guys that you've got to your club that have
been rubbish,
that have been putrid, and they've been on big money, and there might be some names in there as well, because I reckon there's some blokes that have left AFL and SANFL level and gone back. So we might there might be a few big names.
Well, often when you get those AFL guys back, they'll come back and there's this big, fuss about them, but they're probably carrying a knee or something that means they can't bloody move by the time they get back to country.
Well, Fev did well.
Yeah, he would have been value for money, I reckon. Everywhere he went, he'd go and kick 10 goals when he generally played.
Yeah, and he sat at the footy club until 2 a.m. in the morning as well, so he really, invested in the footy club. But no, you listen to, but I've asked people about, Fev, the pigeons and stuff at Yarrawonga and other games that he's been involved with other clubs. He's a great example of its success story, but I'm sure there's plenty out there that have been really bad. So send them in.
Taking a look around the rest of the sporting world, watched last night the Women's World Cup again. I know Australia's playing tonight. There was the closest piece of goal line technology that I have ever seen last night. So the USA lost on penalties to Sweden. Sweden's last penalty, I don't know if you saw it, just went over the line, like by a millimetre. You couldn't even see the gap between the ball and the line. It is amazing when you think now, we've maybe taken it for granted how much technology has changed sport in our time, even since your playing days.
It's helped in a few of our sports, hasn't it? I mean, that's a great decision because I don't think that would be called.
No, it wouldn't. It would have
no goal.
Yeah, I agree.
The second effort was unbelievable, by the way, from the goalie, but didn't quite get it. Has it improved? It takes away a little bit of the atmosphere. Obviously, in cricket, when you think you've got a wicket and then they
review it.
They review it.
Same in soccer as well with offside.
Yeah. Soccer. Our technology in our game's probably not quite as good.
Well, you look at that goal line technology, which is down to the millimetre, and you go and you look at our cameras on the goalposts for AFL.
We had one on the weekend.
Yeah.
I had one yesterday. So do I like it? Yes, because invariably what you want is the end result, especially in things like the World Cup. And talking about women's sport, when are we going to pump money into a sport that we are and have always been unbelievably good at? And I absolutely love the game, and that is netball. Like, once again, we're world champs, we beat England.
Yep.
You know, just never had the funding. You know, I remember when it was on Channel 10, and then it's on Channel 10 for a year or two, then it gets taken off. And in recent times, obviously Collingwood's team
so Collingwood's team is no longer. Yeah, so
no
Craig
longer.
Hutchison has
Hutchie bought that.
Yeah, so it's under the SEN banner at the moment.
So where are they? So will they still be called Collingwood?
No, they won't be called Collingwood.
And I didn't know that, by the way. So well done to Hutchie, because seriously, we've got new sports, and you know, I love the fact that, you know, we're doing really well in soccer. Anything that, and also obviously AFL women, and you know, anything where the girls, you know, can get involved and be active and play sport and love sport, but don't give up on a sport that, you know, is you know what we've known in this country and we're good at. And you go to every country town is built off the back of their netball teams. Yeah?
Yeah.
You know, like your netball teams and your footy teams, you've got the netball courts there. And I mean, it's just what country towns are all about. And yet they don't get the funding that they deserve or get paid the money that they deserve, unlike the soccer and the cricket and AFL women as well, get more money than our netballers, and they're world champs.
You definitely, you noticed that. Jeez, I lost my voice there. Far out. Haven't had that.
Maybe you shouldn't go and knock on your neighbour's door.
You won't be worried at all with that.
Now, do you agree?
Yeah, thanks for picking that back up there. A bit rattled after that.
Do you agree, though, that...
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge participation sport, isn't it?
It's great, Hutchie. I'm rapt about that.
It'd be really interesting to see how that works.
I think they've got to lift it. We've got to pay the girls and encourage our young girls to play netball. You don't want to lose our young netballers to other games.
Now, speaking of country sport, last week you put the call out after being in Broken Hill for anyone who'd been part of what they thought was a really special country footy club to send us in a message. Well, this is something from Craig Slater. Grew up in Country Vic playing for great clubs. I'm now the current women's coach at Karratha Falcons in the North Pilbara Football League, and have never seen such a family-oriented club where you feel like part of an extended family right from the start. Footy is different in WA because clubs don't keep towns running like a lot of small towns in country Victoria. But they still have a big impact. So they do, don't they?
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And look, I was at a good footy club on the weekend in Westies in Mount Gambier. I'm still yet to see, once again, North Broken Hill, just the way they banded together. So that's what what I'm talking about is just the respect and everyone pitching in when you have an event, or you see little kids walking around and there's no lolly packets lying on the ground, or a can of Coke or the bins overflowing or anything like that. It is just a very, very well run machine.
Now, Giddy, or I'm not exactly sure how to say that handle, but anyway, enjoyed the Broken Hill shout out. I played my junior under 13s to 17s there, including a couple of grand finals against Dean Solomon. Lovely guy, and dominated the big game. I think you mentioned Dean last week. That he
Solly.
Yep.
Good man, Solly.
Now, you were with Taylor Walker's family last week, weren't you? So I found this amazing. So JF Oz has sent this in. Well, you know what Taylor Walker's brother's name is, don't you? Did you meet Taylor Walker's brother last week?
Yeah, Ayrton.
His name's Ayrton. This is unbelievable.
No wonder he didn't talk to me. I've called him Ayrton all week.
That's there you go. I don't know many Ayrtons. I've had a couple of Ayrtons come up and say hello because their name's Ayrton.
Wasn't there a racing car driver?
Ayrton Senna, yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I know him.
He's about the only famous one.
Well, he's dead, but yeah, he was.
Yeah. That doesn't make him non-famous.
No, he's still famous, I suppose, yeah. This is
that was a bit harsh, by the way.
This is from Magnus. I thought the Duck was going to give Ayrton an uppercut last podcast. He was revved up. I was a bit worried for my safety when you came in fresh off the operation. You were
Yeah, I might have still had some strong Panadol.
Now, Great White's got a. I like this question.
Great White. Is this from Greg?
It's not from the Shark, I don't think. Hey, Wayne, was it true that Dunstable could bench press around 200 kilos when he was fit? Just wondering how strong some of you guys were in your prime. Didn't hear much about others other than Ablett when Brownless just said that he was so much stronger than anyone else at the club. So who was strong at North?
Yeah, not sure that Bunghole, that's Jason Dunstable, benched 200. The strongest player that I've heard, well then, from my understanding, so Fraser Garrick was unbelievably strong. But a lot of us hit the wall. When I say a lot of us, because I was, sort of in the top bracket, but not anywhere near the strongest. So guys like Fraser, and I assume Jason Dunstable, if he's heard that, the strongest player would be Mick Martin in terms of just pure lifting of weights.
So what could Mick do? What was his max, do you reckon?
I remember you'd have to do a one-off. And let's say about 160, 165. Mark Rasciuto was unbelievably strong at the Adelaide Crows for a guy that played midfield, but, 96, 97, 98 kilos.
Yeah.
I think he benched 160. Mick would throw 165 around like a rag doll.
Wow.
Like he, do reps of 10s, 3 rep of 10s on that, whereas guys are doing 1 or 2 of those or 3 of those.
And this would be pretty competitive, I'd imagine, in a footy club.
Well, back in the day, it was. So you had bench press and you had push-ups and dips. They were the ones that, if you're good at those things. So I wasn't bad at my own body weight, about 160 for bench press. But like I said, there was that next level, bit like the longest kick. Maybe we should ask, we'll put a question out too about, the legendary long kicks, because there's a lot of players, a bit like, that can kick that 60 to 65, but then you have that extra distance, the Ben Grahams and the Rocker Boys.
Yeah.
They were that extra 5 to 10 metres consistently, and they're the biggest kicks, and it's a bit like the bench press. I reckon Mick was a good 10, 15 kilo heavier than any other player that's played the game.
It's managed much more closely now with the sports science guys that we've got, the way how much weight work players are doing. Did you ever have seasons where you felt bigger than other seasons? Because I think about James Surd, there was the year that he did his navicular, he broke the bone in his foot. I think it was 99 maybe. He looked a lot bigger and maybe too big. Did you ever think that did you ever get like that? Or
never got too big. I remember Johnny Longmire put on a bit of size in one particular year, and then they wanted him to put on, and then all of a sudden the trend changed, and then they're trying to get him to lose weight because he got he got bigger, and they wanted that more agile, more athleticism. So then they asked him to lose it, which is harder to do once you've already got there. But no, my lightest once my body matured completely was 95, and I probably fluctuated between 95 and 98, but never any heavier than 98 within a season.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So the players now, the modern day player now is built more like a soccer player. They're stronger through.
They're leaner, aren't they?
Stronger through the core. They're not necessarily leaner. They're stronger through the core.
Yep.
I think they're bigger in the legs, but they've got arms like wet straws.
Yeah. Then they haven't got the big Mark Rasciuto barrel chest though, do they?
No. They, like I said, they're little. You got to run around the shower to get wet.
Now, a final question I've got for you. This is a bit more direct, and we have spoken about Andrew McQualter at length at different times, but this is from Brendon. And this came in before the loss on the weekend, but are we getting a bit of a false reading on him as a coach? He was talked up, but it wasn't like he was handed a basket case. So Brendon said Richmond 9th or 10th from memory, not a basket case. Hardwick didn't get sacked. He chose to leave the club still in a reasonable position. Has McQualter's coaching been what has got them in this position, or do you think they would have been better off with, Frost Lyon had a list or had their list? Or
yeah, well, they're never going to go and you always have to have someone that takes. I think he's done a really good job. Clearly, he knows the group. He wouldn't have changed too much anyway. Although what he has changed, he's played some of the older guys in
their best positions,
rather than sitting in the forward pocket like obviously the captain, well, ex-captain Cotchin was doing there for a period under Hardwick, and then he changed all of that up. So he's done he's tweaked a few things. Fascinating. It's all going to be about who's available, and it always is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, you know, the coaching conversations come back into vogue, and I'm sure there's once again some which I'm going to have a comment on. I'm going to get fired up about, you know, people getting a lot of things wrong and people going after certain people.
Oh, really? Okay.
Maybe
not today, or
no, I might get into that next week. But it's funny how you just start to hear things, and it really pisses me off. You really start to hear things about Ken Hinckley. You know, 4 weeks ago, re-sign him, give him a 4-year deal. Now they've lost 4 in a row. Sack him. Like it's just how quickly people jump on and off is quite incredible for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'll be interested to see who you're referring to specifically.
Well, there's plenty out there that throw a lot of darts and don't get too many right, or have, you know, strong opinions, and, you know, and that's all they are. And some of those opinions are biased.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so biased towards perhaps a club that they played for. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, or support, or or opinions strong opinions aren't made of, you know, people that they know or been associated with.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll certainly look forward to that one. That's all we've got for you today on the Truth Hurts, but something to look forward to next week. You're going to come off the long run by the sounds and really research this one.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, I'll put in some research.
All right. Good to see you, Duck. Catch you soon.
Thanks, Ed.